talking about the raffles and the hype, because I want to move on to quite a bit of the hype stuff. How would you say, how orchestrated was the dunk hype by night? You know, was the Travis Scott accidental, or do you reckon it was always planned, being the next thing as kind of the Jordan retros ran out?
Well, I mean, obviously Travis had been working his way through several Nike silhouettes by that point anyway, hadn't he? He'd obviously worked with Jordan brands, and he was obviously now moving over to Nike to do stuff with them.
Yeah.
Nobody at Nike that I would deal with, I'm sure, would have that information to how the Travis SB thing came along. I know from seeing interviews, not necessarily with him, but with people around him. I know his DJ was a big collector of SBs himself. Whether it was a stylist that put an SB in Travis's hand, whether it was his DJ, or whether he generally, because he has a love of trainers, did wear SBs. Because as we said, this wasn't, SBs were, you know, it always makes me laugh still to this day, because people are like, oh, SBs are only for skateboarders. And I'm like, well, I've never played basketball in my life, but I love Jordan.
Exactly, 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, you're slamming dunks all the time, mate. What are you talking about?
At 5'5", that would be quite difficult.
But no, you're 100% right. You're 100% right. You know, I love dunks, but I'm not a skateboarder. You know.
Yeah. It doesn't. You know. Yeah, exactly. You know, if you love trainers, and I can all see the appeal now. I mean, you know, whether it was Air Force Ones or whether it was Jordan 1s or Jordan 3s, Force 5s, whatever. You know, whatever your thing is, whether it's Air Maxes, doesn't necessarily mean you're a runner. So, you know, it was never,
No, I'm definitely not.
No. But, you know, what I'm saying is, you know, the dunks, because in America, kids had grown up skateboarding in Bruins, skateboarding in Blazers, skateboarding in dunks. Jordan 1s especially, like Ben said, or I could hear him saying about the Craig Stesic show at the beginning, you know, Jordan 1 was a big deal because as if you read the 15-year anniversary in Sneaker Freaker, they talk about how, because the Jordan 2 was coming out, a lot of the retailers in America were liquidating their stock of Jordan 1s at a rock bottom price. So skateboarders were buying them up because they were a great shoe to skate. They had a cup sole, they had good padding around the ankle. And then there's the immortal image that Grant Britton shot of the Bones Brigade, where 3 out of the 4 are wearing Jordan 1s, because at that point they didn't have shoe sponsors, and Nike had, or Jordan brand or whatever, I think it was still Nike at that point, obviously had given some shoes to somebody for them to wear. You know, but that never happened in the UK. That was definitely something that was very much American.
No,
but for whatever reason, I mean, obviously it's the same guy that designed the Dunk has designed the Jordan 1, and you know, so you know, the logic was there that the Dunk was the shoe they chose to kind of launch with. But I can't see how they knew then or knew of Travis. But obviously, undeniably, regardless of what I personally think about him, because I'm far too old to be worrying about being influenced by some rapper.
Doesn't take a lot to figure out what you think about him, Al.
No, certainly no. And it's not. I don't care about him, you know. But people blow smoke up his arse, and I'm like, listen, I come from the 90s, and that was the best generation of rappers. So don't tell me how good Travis Scott is.
Yeah.
I don't need
this conversation's a whole episode on its own. Don't get
exactly. Oh god, yeah.
Undeniably, you know, just on a personal level, I didn't like this shoe. I wouldn't have cared if it was a Travis Scott shoe. I wouldn't have cared if it was a GR Dunk. I wouldn't have cared if it was a collab with someone else. I don't really like shoes that tear off. I'm a big fan of shoes that rub off, like the Lance Mountain Jordan 1s, the Stesic Jordan 1s, like the LA Chicagos. I like shoes that rub off to show another color underneath. The Liberty Dunk High is one of my favorite dunks ever. But I've never been a fan of the tear off thing. I don't like it. I didn't like it on the carpets that we dropped obviously last weekend. It's just not for me personally. That's just not my thing. So for me, the Travis Scott, I just didn't get it. I was like, I don't care about him. But it wasn't really even that shoe. It was the fact that he'd been seen wearing.
It was other SBs, weren't it?
And the Newcastle Browns and all of these shoes, and it ignited. But I don't suppose we'll ever know whether that was something that was orchestrated by somebody very clever at Nike, putting them on his feet, or whether that's something that came naturally. But obviously, what didn't follow after that was incredible, because we've had a Nike SB account attitude since we opened, and from 2011 to 2019. I wouldn't say nobody cared about it, because they did, because we sold thousands and thousands of pairs of Janoskis. That was the big shoe over that period.
Massive,
you know, the SB Dunk came into the UK in 2003 and sort of died off around 2008. Then there was a few years where they were getting their act together, and obviously the Janoski was a game changer for Nike SB. You know, and it wasn't like the Dunk. It didn't really have the hype and the collaborations per se. It was just the simplicity of the shoe, like a Vans waffle. You know, it just, you know, and people got onto that, and that was a big deal. So for us opening,
it was a very comfortable shoe as well. That's why I think.
Being in Essex as well, I think it had a boat shoe appeal to a lot of people.
I think it was very easily wearable. Same as Vans have the old school, Converse have the One Star. You know, every brand has that shoe, and it was, you know, it's affordable. You know, obviously it was very basic and plain, which is what Stefan had wanted for the shoe. And it's hilarious because we'd have guys come in the shop saying, "Oh, have you got this Janoski, blah blah blah," with no idea that it was named after a skateboarder. It was Stefan Janoski's pro shoe that he designed. They just thought it was called a Janoski, like a Huarache is called a Huarache, or a Spiridon is called a Spiridon.
It's like the Stan Smith thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Stan Smith thing still cracks me up every time. Stan Smith, they're like, "Oh, you like the shoe?" And he's like, "Yeah, just like the shoe." You know, like,
just like
literally.
Don't the rights to Janoski's a name now, though. I'm pretty sure they bought it off him, which is just nuts.
Sell out, massive sellout.
Nah, I rate him for it. Nah, big move.
No, but I mean,
if you can monetize it, then don't get me wrong. But suddenly you don't own the right to your own name. Like,
that's fair.
It did a different job though. It did a different job because for years you had, where with the first period of Nike SB, you had the Dunk guys who were early sneakerheads, if you want to call them that, or Dunk collectors. Because in America you've got people like Clark Kent that have these huge collections of Air Force Ones with all of the different, you know, but we never had over here. That was never an option for people to collect over here, which is why you have so many people in the UK who collect Air Max 1s or Air Max 90s or, you know, like I said, Huaraches or Spiridons or shoes that were more accessible. You didn't have that with an Air Max, with an Air Force One. So when the Dunk came along with all of the colors and fabrics and collaborations, and they were like nothing else before, the stories, it was something that was so new. And it was something that was so new, sorry. It was something that was so new to people in the UK. I think, you know, that was what made it, you know, interesting and groundbreaking. But then with that period with the Janoski, it was different again because it wasn't the sneakerheads. It was the skateboarders buying them to skate in, and it was just regular people buying them to wear because they were comfortable.
They bought it out.
Them. Yeah. You know, and it's the same thing now you'll have where people will come in going, "Oh, do you have the Vans old school but with the red tab on it?" Because they don't understand it as the Vans old school pro, but because it's obviously got comfy cush or whatever it's got in it, because it's more than just the Vans old school they can go and buy from Shoe or Office or JD, which is very, you know, plain and flat, and it's the basic Vans. Then obviously you come into our shop and it's like, it looks exactly the same, but because it's got the red tab on it, they know that obviously it means it's more comfortable, it's got more cushioning, more padding in. And that was obviously the thing with the Dunk. You know, but like I said, the Janoski worked for that period of time. And obviously then I suppose the Janoski then waned. And obviously Nike SB had gone through several different infrastructure changes in America. So again, maybe we'll never know, but somebody at the top there obviously decided that they wanted to have another go with the Dunk, which started around 2017 with the 15-year anniversary where they did the box series.
Which was really slept on. Like,
because back then it was really only people who were into SBs or into Dunks that got the relevance of it apart from anything, and it was really cool. And I remember all of us seeing the picture of Costin holding all of the boxes and thinking, "Oh my God, what's this going to be? What does it mean?" Is that, I mean, I've said this before on other things I've done, but I used to go to my Nike SB showroom every season, 4 times a year, and there'd be Janoskis and Blazers and Bruins and team editions or team classics. And then down in the corner, there'd be a Dunk. There'd be one, and it was always a high. It was never a low. It was always just one Dunk high. And that was it. It was the token Dunk was in there for that season. You know, so then all of a sudden, oh, look, there's a whole collection of Dunks. Then we went into 2018 and you had, obviously the Black Pigeon was the first shoe that we were like, oh, this is interesting.
That woke everyone up, didn't it?
Yeah, it brought back the initial, because the Staple Pigeon was, again, a shoe that we never had in the UK because it was only ever launched in New York. But
and the diamond of
the Black Pigeon was so exciting because it was a chance for someone like me to actually get it.
Yeah,
totally. And the diamond that year as well, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, it literally came a few months afterwards. You obviously then had the black diamond, white diamond, and obviously the yellow,
canary,
which was obviously a myth. But you know, I mean, it was it stoked the interest in it again, and not just in older guys who were like, "Oh, I wish I hadn't sold half my collection now," or cut the grass in it like I did. But you know, whatever. You know, and then obviously new guys coming and going, "Oh, what's this interesting?" Because there are that many silhouettes in the world as good as the Dunk or as good as an Air Max 1
Yeah.
or as good as a Jordan 1,
Mm.
obviously, or an Air Force 1. They're are timeless. And when we get the deliveries and it comes out of the box, it looks as new now as it did in 2003.
Yeah.
You know, that's just an incredible shoe. So,
And I wonder with
Andy?
the onset of the bringing back the retro Jordans, because obviously Jordan fell massively out of favour for a period of time when.
yeah.
My theory is that Nike done that to themselves. I was there.
And were they concentrating too much on it being a technical shoe for people to wear to play basketball in, as opposed to bringing it back? Because I kind of feel that the whole dress down attitude towards going to work and being able to go in. When I was growing up, you couldn't go into a club with, I don't know, denim on or trainers. You had to be shoes. You had to be this sort of stuff. But now you can go out and you can, you know, and people are wearing trainers. They're wearing jeans. So I just wonder how much of that move brought back a Jordan 1 classics sort of silhouette, and almost because an Air Force 1's always been there. It's never really fallen out of fashion. But you kind of had the Jordan 1 brought in, and then maybe the Dunk is another one that just comes in dovetailing off the back of it, because it's a very, very similar type of shoe. But do you think the reason that Jordan fell off was because it was very technical? And I mean, they're bloody ugly. The bigger numbered Jordans are just hideous.
Anything after 11 doesn't exist.
No, yeah.
From my point of view, from seeing it in the store, it was a bit weird, and it's kind of not history repeating itself at the moment, because I don't think it is, and Nike won't do what I think they did again. But it felt to me like everyone was moaning they couldn't get the shoes and the quality was dropping. Sort of at the peak of Jordan, where everyone was buying 1s, 3s, 4s. The Thunder and Lightning pack came out. Spizike was there that people actually did like, which was nuts.
I love a Spizike.
There's some awesome colorways in it.
Yeah.
They put the price up, retail went up, quality obviously went up, but numbers went up. And everyone today says, Jordan need to release more Jordan 1s so everyone can wear a pair. They did that, and Jordan fell out. And I think that had a big part of it, was they increased stock numbers. Everybody can buy a shoe. Everybody says that they want to be able to buy a shoe, but when everybody can buy it, everybody doesn't want it. And I think the price increase and the fact that anyone could get them had a big play in it. And like Andy said, they really did go, especially with the Olympics coming in and all that stuff, they focused on performance as well, which it's not a moneymaker for them to a degree. Obviously it is, there's plenty of people buying them, but it's not the same as Jordan athleisure, if you can call it that, or the retros is probably a better way. As well, Adidas timed it really well. Yeezy sort of hit its peak at that time, so they took away from Jordan sales as well. So I think there was a lot going on at the time. So I don't think it's any one thing. I think it was really a culmination that no one had any control over, but to a big part of it, whacking stock numbers up, putting the price up, it did do a dent to the market, definitely.
And from what you hear, and I know you keep a lot of your sort of contacts, etc. How much with Dunk hype coming in, and you know, now we've got ASOS, JD Sports, all these other ones that are selling the basic Dunk models. How much do you know behind the scenes whether they had sort of Jordans planned and they're sort of shelving that and thinking, right, let's fast track some Dunks forward? And you know, I don't know how easy that would be to do, but do you kind of feel that they've put some stuff on ice with Jordan and moved more towards the Dunks? Or
I don't know if they've done it with Jordan, but I guess I'd say I've heard whispers. I can't say this is true. Hold my hands up if it's not. I've got no idea, but I've been told that a lot of the SB quantities have been cut. So you're seeing US get less stores. Obviously, quantity is too low to sell to everyone over here. Some shops aren't getting enough because it's got something to do with the fact that sportswear went, hang on a minute, we can sell a load of Dunks and make a big amount of money. And the production went from SB Dunks to going back to sportswear, and all the sportswear Dunks came in really late to the game. They weren't planned as much as other were. So these colorways are all being churned out. Be damned if anything else gets in the way. Don't know if it's true, but it makes sense. Like it looks like that, doesn't it, to the average person?
Yeah. And now did they shelve the US launch of the VX 1000 shoe?
I think down to production issues, as in quantities that were made, that model, and it does happen. And I don't know why it does, because you see, obviously, when Andy at Nike spilled nothing posts up about a shoe not going to America, like the Vegan Dunk or the VX 1000. Obviously, they get, well, Nike's an American brand. Why haven't we got the shoe? Blah blah blah. And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know why, when the shoes are made in Asia, they make it to obviously Japan, or they make it to Australia or New Zealand. Somehow they make it to South America, but don't make it to North America. I mean, I know from years ago where you know, at the height of the first SB period, America was the largest market, followed by Japan, and then followed by the UK. And when I say the UK, and it's still true to some extent now, a lot of Europe is very, very far behind the UK. So where you've got mainland Europe, you've got like Berlin in Germany, or you've got Paris, you've got Stockholm, or you've got Barcelona. There are key cities in the different countries in Europe which are very on trend and have very good skate shops or streetwear shops and sneaker shops. But then the rest of Europe, when you go outside those cities, is very, very not backward in a horrible way, but behind, you know, very behind. But although social media does change that, and obviously these people have access to buying from online retailers and getting it shipped to them, just the nature of it. It's the same in the UK to some extent. When I was a rep, we used to always joke that if you went west of Bournemouth or south of Bristol, it was like going back in time 2 years. And if now you go down to Cornwall or Devon for a holiday, there are still people walking around wearing Animal and Quicksilver, and you know, what trends start in London or come from America to London and then make their way out to other cities. And I know there is a north-south divide, and it's often spoken about in trainer culture between shoes that are on trend in London and ones that are on trend in Manchester or Leeds or
it's
Liverpool.
huge.
And, yeah. I mean,
It's mad, isn't it? Specials up there are another level.
Yeah, totally. Yes. I mean, going back to what Ben was saying a minute ago, I think the difference is with something like the Jordan 1, obviously that is a Jordan 1. I think the beauty of the Dunk is that Nike had a two-pronged attack with it, because you've got the SB Dunk, which is kept very limited, and it's all about marketing. It's not about making money, because they can't make money out of it, because Nike went through a period many years ago of opening SB up, and you could buy it in Shoe and Office and JD. And it wasn't the Dunk, obviously, but this is many years ago. It was the Janoski, and it was the other shoes that were around that time.
Team editions, things like that.
Yeah, it kind of killed SB off, and it made it not special anymore, because you could buy it everywhere. Exactly what Ben was just saying about it. And I think now, as SB and the Dunk specifically became very popular again, and the hype built and built and built, and we saw that after the Travis shoe, with the Chunky Donkey, with the Grateful Deads, with the Medicoms, and with all of the Dunks that dropped after that last year and even into this year to some extent, although not quite at the same levels initially. Obviously, what Nike were able to do was say, okay, well, that's the SB Dunk, and we'll keep that to, well, I mean, there's like 8 shops in the UK that get Quick Strike, and, you know, maybe there's 30 in the whole of Europe that get it or whatever. But what they were able to do with Nike Sportswear and this Nike SP, as they call it, special projects, was to release these other really cool shoes to start with your top tier neighborhood accounts, you know, Offspring, Selfridges, in London, Good Hood, Foot Patrol, DSM, wherever. And then obviously then from there, then down to like, you know, and then a level below that, obviously size, and a level below that, then you go down to your JDs, which is now what we've seen, because where SB Dunks are kept very limited, you know, they obviously are, they are then able to obviously sell the Dunk, the Nike Sportswear Dunk, to a much bigger audience, which makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense.
Goes on ASOS and everything.
Yeah, sure. I don't blame them for doing that, because they're not making any money out of SBs. In fact, they must lose money, because the amount of money it costs to not necessarily make a last, because the Dunk class exists. But
some of these shoes are mad. Like they're
the fabrication,
whatever it's called.
Yeah. Yeah, for the fabrications and the materials that go into some of them, for the super limited amount of how much is made of that shoe, where's the business sense in that? So for me, yeah, because maybe there's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who are like, I like a Dunk, I'd like to own a pair of Dunks. I either can't get the SB Dunks because I don't win the raffles, or I can't afford to pay resale on StockX, and rightly so, because they shouldn't. But all of a sudden you do have something that's available and affordable. And obviously some of those SP Dunks, stuff like the Ugly Duckling Pack, stuff like the Community Gardens, the Viatech, obviously the ones dropping tomorrow, the City Market. Yeah, I mean, that's dope. Do you know what I mean? They're like those ones which they look like an SB, but they're not an SB.
Yeah.
You know, then obviously, like I said, then that filters down to your kind of Syracuses and the kind of collegiate colorways, and then down to stuff like that one that was in JD, that black and white one that They're called the Panda or whatever. It's and God knows how many they made of them. Probably 1 million or whatever. I don't know.
Millions of them.
No.
And talking
And the
about
rest, yeah.
Yeah, but they can't really do that with an Air Force One, and they can't really do that. And that's the tragedy of the Air Force One, because I love an Air Force One, although designed by Bruce Kilgore. I mean, obviously it's so similar to a Dunk, and yet in the UK it's so tainted because every person on earth, every chavvy bloke and boy and girl all wear triple white Air
It's
Force
the
Ones.
black Air Force Ones.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Isn't it
yeah.
like the black and the white Air Force One? They sell 10 million units a year of each colour.
Yeah.
It's just like
I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm pretty sure it's around that number.
Yeah.
It's like a permanent collection, basically.
Yeah, for sure. And I get that, because not any brand has to have those models of shoe. And if a Nike it is an Air Force One, or it's an Air Max One, or an Air Max 90, or a 93, 95, 97, whatever it is, obviously that's where the numbers are coming from. I think the problem with an Air Force, and I've turned down loads of Air Force Ones for that reason, because to me, and I love Air Force Ones, I'm only going to want to cop it if it's something so special and different.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get any confusion with what I see coming into my shop every other day, because
It's
especially
not a kid Air
girls,
Force One.
and yeah, it's not a diss on girls, but every girl that comes into either wearing white Air Force Ones or Vans old school. So if you're into trainers, those are the two shoes you just don't want to ever be wearing.
Definitely not.
How rude.
I want to jump back to some questions that we've got, because time's ticking on, guys, and I don't
Oh,
want to
sorry.
night. It's been amazing so far, so thank you for all the insights and everything. Couple of things I'm going to put together here, actually. First quick one, what with the whole onset of the Dunk popularity, do you reckon it has saved skate shops from bankruptcy during COVID?
I could tell you for a fact that back in the 2000s, when initially there was a lot of negativity towards skate shops having Nike SB, and the skate shops who were in business then who did have Nike SB, and as the Dunks became more popular, and as the quick strikes, or no, they weren't quick strikes, but as the collaborations and shoes got, each season, each year got more and more extravagant and elaborate, and as they became more and more, it definitely 100%. There are several skate shops around now who definitely wouldn't be around now if it hadn't have been, not necessarily specifically for the Dunk, but if not Nike hadn't have brought a different consumer into their shop, not just a skateboarder. And that's why, and we saw this when I was even in distribution before I left Phase 7 and we went to Hoax. And one of the reasons when we opened Hoax, it wasn't quite like any other skate shop then, was that we realized in order to succeed, and you could have a core skate shop, and the core skate shops that existed when I was young were ones that were down a back street, way away from any footfall, really small, dingy, really cheap rent, and the punk music playing so loud your ears bled as you went in there. No mum and no kids were ever going to go in there. And that was a true core skate shop. And that's great. And I love that. And anyone that can still do that to this day. And there are some who, obviously are the town they're in, the rent's super cheap. So they can have it like that, like almost like their living room. It's like a sofa and there's people going and hang out all day and they can watch videos and they're smoking weed probably and whatever. But the reality, to build a business, to actually have something that worked, you either had to kind of go down the road of being like Route 1, where you had like BMXs and inline skates and kites and yo-yos and, and Heelys and scooters and that side of things, and the hardware side of things, and be like an extreme sports shop or an action sports shop, or you had to become like a boutique. And that's obviously then when Adidas came into the scene in skateboarding, and then obviously Converse brought out the Converse Cons, which was their skate specific shoes. Then it's a different ballgame. And when we opened Attitude, although we started off and we had DVS, we had Lakai, we had Supra, we had all of these skater-owned skate shoe brands, they didn't work. And then when we opened, we had Nike SB, we had Adidas skateboarding, we had Vans. Over the years, it just ended up where all of the others kind of fell away, and we ended up with just those main 4 brands. Those are our main 4 shoe brands. Is Nike Adi skateboarding, Converse, and Vans. And we've tried everything. We've had all of the brands in, but that's the difference. The skateboarders would come in and they would buy Vans, or they would Adi skateboarding. We sell a lot more Adidas skateboarding to skateboarders than we do Nike SB to skateboarders.
Yeah.
You'll have guys who come in and buy Nike who are into Blazers or Bruins because they're great skate shoes, and the Niger, but they're not Dunks. I don't personally know anybody that skates in Dunks. I don't know that they ever have done. I know people do, but I'm just saying I don't know any of our regulars that do.
That's something that I've always thought is really interesting, with the very common misconception that, as you said earlier, like only skaters should be wearing dunks. If you're then also saying, on the other hand, the real skaters aren't wearing dunks. So pick a lane, people. Just like...
Well, no, but I think whenever something is special, then people want it kept special. Skateboarders, by the nature of what makes you a skateboarder, is you're not really a team player, because skateboarding is something you don't need to be part of a team. It's not like tennis where you've got to play against somebody, or football where you've got 10 other people on a pitch with you. Skateboarding is something you can do on your own, or with a mate, or with a group of mates. And that's the beauty of it, which is what makes it hard to quantify as a sport specifically. You know,
I don't know how it's going to be in the Olympics.
No, it's different from that. But the nature of skateboarders is you don't want to be like everybody else. You don't want to look like everyone else. You don't want to be like everyone else. You're not a sheep following whatever that sheep mentality is, because people haven't got enough savvy to work out for themselves. Skateboarders, by definition, usually are very artistic and very creative. You know, and I'm very lucky that the guys I work with, Attitude, and the guys I work with who make our videos are also very creative, and we've been able to obviously do what we've done with the content to put us on the map.
So on that subject, and we're going to ask you kindly if you would come back on with your design team at some point in the not too distant future. But what made you want to produce this content? You say about putting yourself on the map. What's the end game for you? I know you said that, say, you're one of 8 shops in the UK that can get the more sort of privileged, rarer drops. Where does it go on from there? I mean, you ultimately, is it being noticed by SB in the States? Is it sort of you want to become a flagship UK store? We see various different stores in other countries that have done collaborations. So whether it's, you know, Concepts in Boston, or you've got various different. What's the sort of the main driver behind you doing the content alongside the drops?
I mean, I'd spent 5 years out on the road for Volcom, and I'd been around every skate shop in the UK. I'd obviously dealt with most of them myself when I was at Phase 7, but most of that was done over the phone. It was over the phone sales. But when I'd then gone to Hoax and then gone back to wholesale, out on the road, you know, I went to Slam, I'd gone to Note, I'd gone to Welcome, I'd gone to 50/50 in Bristol. I'd been around to all of the best skate shops, and I knew what the shops looked like, and I knew. So when we opened Attitude, I knew exactly how it needed to look as a bricks and mortar store to stand out. And still to this day, we're very lucky that it's a great space, and people always come down, reps or people from the brands or even customers, and they're like, "Oh, the shop's so, you know, it looks great, blah blah blah." You know how it's all laid out and everything. And then when we did the website, and it's very, very difficult with a website because to stand out against anybody, because it's so two-dimensional, especially when you're going up against someone like Flatspot, because that's what he does. Andy, who owns Flatspot, used to have a skate shop many years ago, back in the 80s, in Plymouth, a tiny little shop down an alleyway that his dad used to have as a smoking shop. I used to sell nicotine to the sailors. And he basically went to Andy one day and he said, "Look, I'm going to retire. You can have the shop." He obviously owned it. "You can do what you want with it." And Andy was like, "Cool, I'm going to turn it into a skate shop." So him and his friend Nick started Flat Spot, which was this little skate shop, and the dad was like, "Look, you can do what you want with it, but just keep this one cabinet in the corner, because I've got guys who've been coming here for years, just coming and get their backy." So he had that in the corner, and that was like that for many years. And then, as there was a very bad recession in the kind of mid-90s that took probably half of the skate shops in the UK under. And Andy rang me one day and he was like, "Yeah, we're closing the shop. You know, obviously skateboarding's dead. Again, it had kind of gone through its phase and it was going for a real bad lull." And that was the last I heard of it. And then it wasn't until I was actually at Hoax a few years later that the guy who was his partner, Nick, rang me up one day and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've got this skate park down in Plymouth and I'm distributing some brands. Can I come up and show you?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, come up." And so he came up to Ipswich, where our head office was. And I was like, "Oh, what's Andy up to now?" I think you guys obviously separated the business or whatever. And he's like, he's going to do this online skate shop. You know, and although I don't think I stood there and laughed at the time, I probably could have done, because that just didn't exist. Yeah. There was no such thing as an online skate shop. You know, there were shops that had websites, but Andy, who owns Flats, was very artistic. Is a great photographer. he understood from day one that without a physical shop for people to walk into and pick up the product, the photography had to be such, and it was then and is now more than anything, so good, obviously, that people, it was almost as good as seeing it. So he really set the bar as an online. The funny thing with Flatspot is when Nike SB first came along, he couldn't get a Nike SB account. And it took the rep 2 years to persuade Nike to give him a Nike SB account, because he was an online only retailer and they only really wanted bricks and mortar shops, core skate shops, to stock Nike SB, not this guy who was online, which is the irony of it, because obviously all these years later, he's the biggest Nike SB retailer in Europe. He's absolutely huge. None of us come anywhere near to it because he's done such a great job of getting him up that level as an onliner. So going back to your question, Andy, I think for us it was, we've got the store, it looks great. We've got the website, that looks fine. Certainly maybe not as flashy as Flatspot, but certainly as good as Slams or Welcomes or Notes or anyone else's. It was a good looking website. The social media was good. But the thing I kept coming up against was the fact that we were in Colchester in Essex and nobody cared about that. Slam was in London, Note was in Manchester, Focus is in Edinburgh. These guys were in key cities. And then I had a meeting with these guys from Nike SB in the shop, and he was like, look, shop's great. It's definitely probably the best shop I've seen in the UK. But
it's in the wrong place. Yeah.
Geography was our enemy. So he was like, you're going to have to do something pretty special to kind of elevate yourselves virtually in a virtual world. And that's kind of where the idea came from, because nobody did that. Flatspot, there'd be a dunk release or whatever.
How many years ago was it? Sorry.
This was what 2018, I suppose.
Okay.
17. 2017. So I think at that point, and then literally, I think the Black Pigeon dropped, and the Diamond Dunks dropped, and I could see that there was potential for it to sort of come back. If they were working, going back to Jeff Staple and back to Nicky Diamond, doing those shoes, then what was new that was going to be coming along, and we were starting to get dunks in that were interesting. Stuff like the Chicken and Waffles dunk. We had the Chairman Bow, I think, the year before. There was the Skate Park of Tampa Pirate. There was stuff that was interesting, and all of a sudden it was like, well, look, we can't out photography Flatspot. We can't. He's got an incredible studio. He's got the best equipment. Obviously being very successful has allowed them the money to buy all of that equipment. We didn't have any of that. So we were like, well, what could we do that could make us show up? Because we're not in London, and we're not in Manchester, and we're not in Edinburgh, and we're not online like Flatspot doing what he's doing. And that's kind of where the content on Instagram, the videos and animations idea came from. Purely to kind of flag us up and say, look, we're over here. Look, we're good too.
Yeah.
And we're not in a city, but the shop's still good. It's a good skate shop. We have all of the best brands. We deserve a piece of the pie, or we deserve to be noticed. And that's exactly what we did. So, and it's taken a long time, before anybody at Nike really took notice of us. It was probably up until when we did the Oski video at the end of 2019, where Oski himself was in Portland at the headquarters and showed the head guys at Nike SB the video. He's like, look, these guys in the UK made this insane Jaws video for the shark video for the dunk. And they were like, wow, this is sick. Like, this is too. So all of a sudden they suddenly had heard the name Attitude. They'd heard it. And then people in Europe started talking about that. People in America were talking about us. And then obviously,
on your post.
Obviously, now they comment on the post and stuff, but I mean, it was, and then obviously the Travis happened, massive increase in interest in Nike SB and the dunk specifically, and then we started bringing the stuff out, like the first big animations I think were the Ben and Jerry's Chunky Dunky video, and then the two videos we did for the Grateful Dead, which had a massive interaction. We had like 125,000 views of the Chunky Dunky video. Then all of a sudden it felt like we were getting somewhere. But it is a lot of hard work. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of effort. I'm dealing with 4 different animators and John, who does all our music. And it's constant. Even today now, before we jumped on this, I've been on 2 different, a WhatsApp group and an Instagram group, because we've got 2 videos dropping this weekend. One on Friday for the dunk dropping next Friday, then another one on Saturday.
You keep raising the bar. You keep raising
I've
the
got
bar.
one final question.
Oh.
Go for it, because we're going to wrap up. I've got two
Yeah.
others. Go for it, Leon. Go for it.
So it's kind of a two-pronged one. So I know you mentioned before about being able to get product into the right hands. So if you had a vision of what that ideal customer would be for the more limited product, and also if you have any stories of the lengths that people might have gone to try and get stuff that's a little more limited. We know there's a lot of beggy people out there, and I'm sure there's some very unique experiences.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen so much in the store. I mean, obviously we lost a big chunk of last year to COVID, and we're still obviously in that now until next month. But we lost over a third of last year. But it doesn't happen so much in store. Most of the guys that come down to the shop who aren't local from London or from wherever, obviously guys like Ben, who I've sort of got to know over time, are really cool. Yeah, you do obviously have guys that come in and try and, I mean, I don't work on the shop floor. I work in my office, so I'm not like. So you'll hear guys come in the store and be chatting to the guys behind the counter or whatever and saying, oh, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. And, you obviously do have people that come in and, I won't say sucking up to you, but obviously are being, they want to get in because they want access to it and they think that's going to do it. My main thing was, I just want to get the shoes on the feet of the people that want to wear them, that love SB and love dunks. I don't care if they're a skateboarder or they're a sneakerhead, however you want to label it. And I don't think you need to label it. It just that's all I'm interested in doing. Because like I said, the lineups we did and the last lineup we did, which Ben was at, which was for the Night of Mischief dunk, which was 2019 Halloween. And that got messy in the queue. We had to have a security guard on the door. And all of a sudden, you're introduced to this vernacular because we'd had our delivery of the shoes already, and it wasn't a lot. Ironically, when we'd pre-ordered the shoe, because it wasn't a quick strike, there was no sample of it. It was a CAD in a catalogue, and then my rep said, "This is a Night of Mischief. It's going to be the Halloween dunk. This is the picture of it. It doesn't look very good. I would go easy on it. Don't go too deep on it because." We don't know what it's going to look like. Just, so they warned us not to go too heavy on it. Apparently that same warning was given to every SB account and nobody did. In the meantime, the hype train was building. As we said, obviously earlier that year, we'd seen stuff, obviously like the pigeons and then the panda pigeons and the diamonds and whatever else had come along. And all of a sudden we'd had a delivery from Converse earlier in the week, a big delivery, because Converse delivered the whole season in one go. So we'd had 18 boxes from Converse. And obviously Converse is owned by Nike. So it comes from the Nike warehouse in Nike boxes. And basically the delivery had come into the store before I got into the stockroom. Some kid had photographed all his boxes on his phone, posted it on some group saying, Attitude have had their Night of Mischief delivery. They've got hundreds of pairs.
It was 500 pairs, the rumor was, wasn't it? That you got, like...
So we turned up to the shop the morning of the launch, thinking there was going to be, I don't know, maybe a dozen people outside, and that was cool, and hopefully everybody would get a pair, depending on the size. And it was like 60 people, or it was 80 people, or it was 100 people, and all of a sudden you're like, we like I said, we had a security guard, and I sent Sean, our shop manager, out to the front and said, right, count back this many people to how many pairs we had, and it tell everyone else to go home. And then that's obviously where it got ugly. And that's where
guys, we've got some all-stars just delivered if you're interested in those.
Well, no, but this was basically these kids were at the door, these reseller kids, and they're like, oh, fuck you, we know you've got hundreds of pairs, you're backdooring them, blah blah blah. And it was all of a sudden like people are accusing you of things you don't really even know existed. The idea of backdooring wasn't something that ever dawned on anybody there. Nobody was thinking of buying the shoes and selling them to anybody. Whether it was eBay, and I don't think StockX didn't really kicked off at that point. So it was just ridiculous. And then some of the kids who obviously had come down from London or whatever, everybody dispersed, everybody went home. And a few hours later, this group turned up and we were like, look, where have you got this idea from? Where have you got this thing from that we've got hundreds of pairs? It's insane. He's like, look, and he showed us his phone. And there was this picture of these 18 boxes of Converse that some kid had posted on some chat group in London, which had meant all these kids had come. Yeah. And I just said, this is insane. They weren't Night of Mischief. They were Converse.
I can remember Sean laughing so much when he saw that message. He was in stitches.
Yeah. I mean, I was happy to see it because I couldn't understand where this rumor had come from, and it was from this one photograph that some kid sneakily took that had led on to being this whole thing. But at that point, we realised that was it. We could never do another in-store release. We couldn't have that lineup. We couldn't have violence or potentially people ending up. You know, we've seen it since then. Obviously, with SBs in America, where people have been shot over dunks, stabbed over dunks, and that should never happen over any show. Nobody should have to fear that. And like I said, then obviously with the dawn of the bots came the fact that we realised we couldn't sell stuff online. So then, as much as, like I said, the pain in the backside that raffling is, and I do understand people's stress, and we try and get as many shoes out to people as we can, and we try and take the reseller vernacular out of the equation so that hopefully they end up on the right feet. But we can only do what we can do. We like I said, we're one small independent shop, and rightly so. You know, obviously there's only a limited amount of dunks going round, and that you know, like Ben said, you know, if we were getting 100 pairs of each quick strike, or 200 pairs, or 500 pairs, then it would lose its.
They're not
what
quick
made it
strikes.
special, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Exactly.
They just sit there.
So you know, it's a difficult one, isn't it?
How many? Thank you. No, totally different. Quickly, how many emails are you getting on the midnight raffles? Roughly?
Anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000. Yeah. Yeah. So
how many did you get outside the time frame?
Oh, yeah, that's amazing, because obviously we send the newsletter out.
Yeah. And
then it'll say, right, the enter between midnight and 12:30. There's your half an hour window to enter, and I would hazard to guess 70% are either before it, like when they got the initial email earlier in the evening, or at some other point during. And still, actually, I think, what did we have the other day? I think still days after the street hawkers, days after the carpets, we were still getting people entering. And it's like, did you not read it? Did you not, you know, specifically there's terms and conditions there saying enter between this time frame, anything but after that, you know. And same with obviously the lengthy spiel I have to put on every Instagram post saying, like, you know, don't contact the shop, don't DM, they won't be read. You know, and that's not being out of order, because, you know, at the end of the day, we're a small team and we don't have the time to be reading everybody's DMs. It's impossible.
DMs, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and people, but no, I mean, very quickly, I would say, yeah, I've had people ringing up saying, I've just found out my granddad's got COVID and a pair of shoes will make me feel loads better. I've had people will go on there with a real sob story as to why they should get that pair of dunks and why that's going to make all the difference to their life. And we all understand that thing. Every time we all take a win, it makes you feel better in that moment. But the reality is, it is just a pair of shoes. It is just, you know, the feeling's short-lived. You know, I'm sure it must be the same. I'm sure it must be the same for people that gamble and win on the horses or whatever. You know, that feeling of exhilaration.
Yeah.
You know, so I get it. I do get it. I do understand. You know, like I said, but we're all in the same boat. We're all limited to how many of these shoes we have, and we just don't have enough to try and help. You can't please all of the people all of the time. No. And with SB, you can't please most of the people most of the time, but you can try and please a few, and hopefully they're the right people, and the right people are, you know.
Amazing.
But people will get bitter because guys in the shop get them, or people will get bitter because John or Jojo the beatmaker, obviously, it's like he does the music for every video. Of course, he's going to get access to them. You know, it just yeah. Why wouldn't you do that? You know, and when I listen to a lot of podcasts, and you listen to Complex Sneakers podcast with Joe LaPuma and Brendan and Matt, and you see some of the big guys on there like Dom DeLuca from Brooklyn Projects or Dion Point from Concepts, and all of them say the same thing. It's like, this is how many shoes were allocated. Of course, the guys that work for the shop are going to get access to them. Of course, you know, why
working for a company? It's like any company you work for, you get privileges.
Yeah,
that's it.
Retail doesn't pay well. You know, that's fact. No, you know, so one of the few perks any skateboarder or sneaker collector, sneakerhead, whatever you like to call yourself, if you work it for, is getting access to the product, and they don't get it for free. None of them get it for free. John doesn't get him for free. Well, the guys who does, you know, the people that it just means obviously I'm going to try and hook them up because they do the work with me.
It pays well when you backdoor 18 crates of the dunks, though.
Well, it would do, wouldn't it? I mean, Jesus, yeah. I mean, if it had been the case, I wouldn't even know how to do that. I mean, if this trophy room, I mean, this thing has just come up that obviously Andy posted about today with this VP of Nike's son, and he's just sitting there behind a wall of. I mean, logistically, I just don't know how he's done that though. I still to this day, when you have these guys like these guys in LA, what they called cool kicks or whatever, who have Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Bentleys.
Mad.
And their video will say, yeah, we spent $500,000 on shoes, and it's mind-boggling to me because I can't understand how that works.
Yeah, well, if
I haven't got the patience.
he was turning over $200,000, if he was turning over $200,000 of shoes, and he's working on a 10 or 20% margin, plus he's got his Discord group, that people are paying $250 a pop, and he's got nearly 500 people on it. So then it's
doing something, right?
No, I get the financial side, I get the economics of it. I just like that kid, if that's what it was, if it's the son of the VP and she was obviously getting him access to all of those shoes, then obviously, yes, that's wrong. And if she's been fired or let go because of it, then fair play. But this whole this trophy room thing with Marcus Jordan, like, you know, you've got pictures of guys sitting in a whole room of them, and it's like, how did you do that? Did you work for Jordan? Do you know someone who works for Jordan? I don't believe it was Marcus Jordan did that. It doesn't make any sense why he would do that. So how did it happen? Did they hijack the lorry when it was going into the Memphis distribution center?
It's got to be distribution center, hasn't it? It's got to be.
It has to be. But it makes no sense. Yeah. But we obviously had that a lot on Instagram with the SBs. We've got these guys in China and in Asia who are leaking images of dunks, shitty pictures usually of them on their feet months and months beforehand. But clearly they are guys who either own the factories, work in the factories, their uncle owns a factory, I've heard. There's definitely 2 or 3 guys over there who are connected to factories who are making the samples, because they had pictures of the strawberry cough, they had pictures of the 7-Eleven dunk that never got made.
Yeah.
So they obviously must be from the factory in order. I mean, look at the Grateful Dead, for God's sake. We had 3 colours, and yet still to this day I get people asking me for the blue and pink ones, which never existed beyond some.
The amount of arguments about that colour dropping was another level. People were adamant they were doing it.
But this is the world we live in now. Are Nike behind that? Are they fueling it? Are they giving these guys the product to leak out there to build the hype up? Who knows? Nobody will ever know.
No.
Well,
I would think they do.
From an employee point of view, so part of my contract, when I worked for Nike, obviously we got a healthy discount. It was very nice. We got uniform, pair of trainers every 3 months, all that. We were not allowed to sell any of the product we were given by the company, anything bought on discount. Couldn't. There was flexibility with sharing the discount, obviously, but there were rules in place for that. It couldn't give product away, any of it. So and that's not high up people. I don't know, obviously, when you get to VP, obviously things change quite drastically, but there's precedent in the company that you're not allowed to use it to your advantage. You're not allowed to give people discount willy-nilly in the shops. You can't go and sell all the stuff you get cheap. So everyone's going, oh, Nike are doing everything to try and make people pay resale. It keeps the market going. I wouldn't say it's true. I don't think they're bothered by it. Don't get me wrong, because it's all marketing for them. But I don't think they're actively encouraging this resale market. No. Foot Locker are different. They own GOAT. So who's to say what Foot Locker are doing? But yeah,
they're just responding to a changing trend. That's what they're doing. These businesses are responding, because no longer is it now sell a pair of trainers, see in 6 months. It's now about the community. It's about offering somewhere for people to hang out, a little bit taking that community skateboard thing that we were talking about. But it's a bigger thing now. There's a whole secondary market that's worth however many billions of dollars per annum. I get they're just adapting to changing.
It's an industry in itself, isn't it? You've got retail shoe industry and then the resale shoe industry. They're 2 completely different things. Yeah.
Anyway, guys, on that note, we are going to wrap up. I've got one final quick question. Any nice big opening plans for Attitude on April the 12th, hopefully?
Sorry, what did you say?
Any opening plans for Attitude when you open back up again in April?
Well, yeah, I mean, last year was officially our 10-year birthday, because Attitude started in 2010. So last year was going to be 2020. It was our 10 years. We had events planned for the store. We had a big skate event planned in Colchester. We had various sneaker events we were going to do in store. We've always done lots of stuff in store anyway. We've had bands play live in the store. We've had DJs play live in the store. We've always been into having events in store, and COVID ruined all of that. So then we decided that, as the first Attitude shop was in Ipswich, and then Colchester opened in 2011. So we decided, right, okay, well, 2021, that'll be the 10-year anniversary of the physical shop that we all work in. So then that would be so yeah, we have got lots of things planned once we are allowed to reopen, and obviously depending on what the rules are around social distancing, because that's a difficult thing now. I mean, I've got people going, oh, I want to come down as soon as you reopen. We should all come down and hang out, and and it's just like, God, yeah, that's great, but let's like I said, it's just we've got to open safely. We've got to, all those things were taken into consideration when we reopened last June.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was crippling to us as a business to have to close again in November, and for us now as well. Somehow, obviously, we make it through it, but it's not been easy. I wouldn't say that for a minute.
Them 18 boxes of dunks helped.
Well, yeah, it would have done, wouldn't it? And the thing is, I get that, and look, if there are shops, and I know this happens in America a lot, and again, the complex guys have spoken about it. If there are shops that are getting, I don't know, 24 pairs, 50 pairs of shoes, and they are shipping half of them or two things.
Daddy, don't get felt.
Okay, I will do. Yeah, we'll do. Sorry. If they are shipping a load of them off to StockX and taking the profit for themselves, then yeah, I know I wouldn't do that, but I wouldn't put it past them. It's you can't blame them to get through the COVID crisis in the UK, Europe, America. If people have done whatever they've done, and and I know that stuff goes on like that, but just going back to what you're saying, what Ben was saying a minute ago about the policies that Nike have. I mean, obviously, Attitude isn't Nike, but even now, any shoes that any of us staff get, like the Quick Strikes, Dunks, whatever, anything we pay full retail for. We don't buy it cost price. We don't get a discount for it. If we're having anything that's limited, then we pay full retail for it because it seems the right thing to do.
Lovely. Okay, guys, it's been amazing. We've been going over an hour and a half. It's our longest round table.
Oops.
Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on. I've been JP Kicks as always. Andy?
I've been Andy Wilson, that's the economist. Thank you very much, guys, for coming on. It's been really, really great insight into how things have changed over the years, and it's been cracking, and I'm really looking forward to the guys being able to see this footage. So it's very, very much appreciated. So thanks to both of you.
Pleasure always.
No problem. Cool.
And Leon, you're Leon Avery.
I've just been Leon Avery.
Ladies and gentlemen, you know what to do. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Always helps the channel out. We will be back again next week for another episode of Round Table Full Frame Kicks. Thank you very much. See you soon.
Thank you.